Yeah, once again, feel most welcome to our consciousness study group. This is our philosophical class and our Thursday regular class meetings for this philosophy, where we do the reading and sharing our thinking in regards to this philosophy. So thank you very much for those who have joined, and those who will be joining us later, feel most welcome. Today I have sisters in the room, not the brothers will be joining later, but we appreciate your support and your presence today. So our reading will start with the highlighted text in color. I think it's green. I'm not sure with blue or green, but I think it's close to green. Yes. So I request any of the sisters to read for us, probably Sister Tapua, and
Yes,
feel
I'll
most
do
welcome
that.
Sister Myra and Sister Joan Kimani. So Sister Tapua, read for us the two paragraphs, and then we discuss.
Oh, okay.
But I'll
Right.
also go back to read the book later, which is referred down here. We will also read it. But let's read the two paragraphs.
Okay. Right. The first paragraph. But the interaction between the alteration of social circumstances and the content of consciousness is not one-sided, for circumstances can be changed by revolution, and revolutions are brought about by men who think as men of action and act as men of thought. It is true that revolutionaries are produced by historical circumstances. At the same time, they are not chaff because the wind of change, but have a solid ideological basis.
Leave it there.
Okay.
That text is very heavy.
Yes.
Let me read it slowly. But
right.
the interaction between the alteration of social circumstances and the content of consciousness is not one-sided. For circumstances can be changed by revolution, and revolutions are brought about by men who think as men of action and act as men of thought. It is true that revolutionaries are produced by historical circumstances. At the same time, they are not chaff before the winds of change, but have a solid ideological base.
Yes.
Wonderful. This is one of the strongest paragraphs ever.
And now, it's so relevant to what's going on in Kenya.
Yeah, I want us to start sharing our thinking. But I'll start with directly of as you alluded, what's going on in Kenya. Here, there are circumstances and there's consciousness from our own thinking.
Yes.
Now, the circumstances underlying Kenya today is a situation whereby young people do not have jobs, taxation is so high, companies are closing, there are more tax, and there's no capital flowing or finance or money flowing. And this is causing some level of dissatisfaction amongst the citizens. The government is borrowing more, taxing more, and no projects. Now, there's a group of conscious young people who are learned, university graduates or in university, and they're taking a conscious step. And these circumstances now is what they want to change, to have a country or a situation where the welfare and their well-being can be guaranteed, where they can enjoy their country and have all that they want. And they want to do it through a revolution. And this revolution, to my thinking, is conscious revolution, the revolution of consciousness, which is a revolution in their mind. But they have moved from what you call self-consciousness to be in the street now to fight the revolution so that they can bring change in the social circumstances. And it's been said, change are brought by men. In this case, both genders, because the term man or man, I think men is both genders, not to be discriminative, because even in the Bible, there's that the word man, which is basically sometimes being used to feel like it's a man is a male. It's both genders here. So the revolution is brought by both, in this circumstance, both men and women. And these men and women are men who think as men of action and act as men of thought. And that's why our class is thought and action. So you must sit here to think, and that's why you share your thinking here. And the process of sharing your thinking, you can formulate an action. So then the revolution here in this circumstance also rely on two things: thought and action. Thinking revolutionary alone is not enough. Acting by being in the street and fighting for it, or waking up and voting for it, is the action that is needed to actualize the revolution. So the revolution lies on these two contents for my thinking: the ability to think, which relies on consciousness and awakeness and mental liberation, and the ability to move beyond think and act. And he says it is true that revolutionaries are produced by historical circumstances. For example, this younger generation today in Kenya, they're coming out of frustrations and false promises that they were given by this regime in 2 years ago towards election. And at the same time, they are not chaff before the winds of change, but they have a solid ideological basis. Now, this is what lacks: the ideological basis. And it's upon the younger people to be tied by ideological basis. For now, they're all united irrespective of their different ethnicity to fight for one thing: get Ruto down. Ruto must go. And that is their narrative. And that is what brings them together, because they know he is the problem. They were rejecting the financial bill that's oppressive, but that is the direction they are thinking as young people of Kenya. I'll allow other members to also share their thinking in regards to that paragraph. Sorry for starting fast, because I felt it was very close to what is very urgent and going on in Kenya. So let me.
Can I say something? Which is that I liked on Tuesday, you were telling us how the women were leading in a big way the revolution. And I saw a lovely poster the other day that said, you can't tax me on the voices in my mind. Something like that this woman was holding up. And,
Yes.
And I like the fact that it would seem that they are a big part of what is going on, and that they're fighting hard to say they don't have the money and you shouldn't be taxing us on personal products that we need. So I think that we definitely need to be reading these two paragraphs with men/women attached to it, especially at this time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Yes, thanks for sharing your thinking. Indeed, there were a group of women who sang in the prison the whole night until they were released from the cells. They were in police cells the whole night singing that the president is like the president is used of them, so he always lies to them. They call him Mr. Lies. So yes, there's a serious force of consciousness, and the women taking the lead now. Like there's a video I was seeing today, a young lady, very short, actually bullying. It's like bullying a police officer. it was very interesting. Yes, Sister Tapua?
Yes. For me, I'm looking at the middle line that starts, well, let me say, circumstances can be changed by revolution, and revolutions are brought about by people, right? But not just any people, by men who think as men of action, because it's the juxtaposition of thinking and action. For me, that means it's calculated action. And act as men of thought. Their actions are based on their thought. So I'm thinking of the Zimbabwe situation where when Robert Mugabe fell, people acted, but their action was not based on thought. Because if it was, they would have anticipated and thought through what was going to happen. So we had no plan. All we were thinking of is we must get this person gone, but we had nothing to replace it. So I'm hoping that with what's going on in Kenya, there are people behind it, men of action, who are seeing that this process is calculated and who are seeing the direction in which the actions should go in order for people to achieve what they need to achieve in the ultimate end of the whole process.
Thank you for that. That's where the last part says that, but have a solid ideological basis.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
like in Kenya also, we are asking what next? If you remove, so what next? How organized are you and what ideological unity do you have to propel this moving forward?
Yes.
But let me move to Sister Maida. Sister Maida?
I think what he's saying is what has already been said by people that have discussed, by Brother Pigeon and Sister Tapua. So that what I think he's saying is revolution needs an awareness, an awakening in consciousness. And he's not the only thinker, African thinker, that has said this. Sekou Touré said that he said, for any revolution, the people need to be aware. There has to be an awareness. There has to be an awakening in consciousness. And he called this a very, very important, he called it an investment. And the same as Leopold Shegu, he said that, we have to take a concerted effort and an intentional effort to educate ourselves, to learn, to relearn and unlearn that all the lies that have been told us, and learn what we need to rise up and change our circumstances. And I think that's part of what we're doing here, meeting every Thursday. We're trying to learn and awaken and arm ourselves with this knowledge. I think the last sentence is very important. About not being chaff, to be centered in a specific ideology or philosophy as we are learning here. Because otherwise then you will be taken by any whim, and the imperialists already know that. That's how they've manipulated us for 60 odd years. But if we are grounded in our philosophies, our African thought and our African ideologies, then they'll stand less of a chance of sabotaging us. And I've been listening to Brother Pigeon sharing about what's happening in Kenya. It's very hopeful because, first of all, these are young people. So that's very important, I think. And also, I think Kenyans generally are very aware. They're very conscious of what's going on, of how the systems are run. I listened to quite a few political analysts on YouTube, and they could give any CNN analyst or so-called expert a run for their money, because these are young people, but you watch them and you'll get a clear picture. They have a deep understanding of the facts, of what's going on, of what's being said. It's really very impressive. So I'm kind of not surprised that the young people are that awake. I mean, if these are ordinary men and women that just have a camera and they sit down there and they tell you exactly what's going on, and they see through the lies and they analyze every situation. So I would say in that respect, perhaps Kenya is well ahead of Uganda. But I think what's happening is really, really, really promising. And to me, Kenya is an example of this paragraph, because I think the young people there are cautious, they're aware, they are erudite. We have Brother Pigeon himself here. He's a young man, and there's plenty of young people. So that's really encouraging. So yeah, I think it's we as Africans need to make an effort to educate ourselves, to unlearn the Western indoctrination through the education system that just makes us cogs in their capitalism, and then learn the ideologies and philosophies that will raise us up to revolution, and also to be really centered and really grounded in that ideology so that we're not just blown away in the wind by whatever the imperialists will think up. Thank you.
Thank you. The key question will be, in African setup, are the circumstances ready for revolution? And are people conscious enough? Because it says social circumstances and the content of consciousness is not one-sided. That should be very clear. Now, the circumstances are ready. The consciousness still have to be worked on. But despite of all these two, the revolution must be founded on a solid ideological basis. Let me get other opinions. DJ Mr. P. DJ Mr. P, are you ready to come in? Or Nancy Wright, sister?
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. I haven't actually read the passage or processed it as yet. Did you just want me to comment generally, or you wanted me to comment directly on what's written?
I wanted you to comment on the first paragraph, the green one. You can read it.
Oh, I haven't actually seen that yet, you know. I haven't read that yet.
Okay, Sister Nancy?
Yeah, so I'll pass for now. I'll pass, yeah.
Sister Nancy?
I think she's just sent a message to say she's at work and she'll have difficulty talking.
Okay, Raspala, you had an election in South Africa recently. How could you gauge that in terms of this first paragraph on revolutionary or revolution? Did you attain revolution? And what was the challenge in regard if you didn't attain it? Was there a lack of consciousness or the circumstance was not right? Let's also use that as a critical examination to this. Raspala. Raspala, can you proceed? You are unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes?
Yep, we can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, I was saying concerning this paragraph and what you are saying here in South Africa, son of the lake. I'm saying, Wana, what has happened yesterday here in South Africa, the people, obviously, they are not very keen, obviously, the black masses, because what is happening is that the ANC has actually joined forces with the opposition part, with the white part, which is DA, which is a big challenge, because historically the DA has been the apartheid party in South Africa, and ANC has been the party that was having policies and ideologies opposing the apartheid party. But now today, in the 2024 elections, they are now in one government of national unity. So, hey, it's a really... So, yeah, concerning this paragraph, I would say this historical moment that has happened in these previous elections of South Africa is going to determine the revolutionaries that are going to come out of, because already people are coming out, not to include Julius Malema and the MK of Zuma, but just people, the masses in general, who are in the streets, are coming out with a lot of things. So yeah, that's how I link them for now. Bless it.
Now, thank you. But before you leave, do you think South Africa, based on this text, did the South Africa attain the revolution? And if it didn't attain the revolution expected, or is revolutionized, what was the challenge? Was there either lack of content of consciousness, or the social circumstance was not right, or there was no solid ideological basis for their argument?
Yeah, my brother, I think all of the above, because it is just as Mother Dr. Kress Francis Welsing has said that the ideological issue here is that the white people genetically know that if they let the black man be free, he will impregnate all the white women and there will be no white children in the future.
Black people.
So now on that problem now, so they are trying by all means necessary, systematically. They call it the system of white supremacy. So even in South Africa, that's what they doing here. So it's not a revolution that has happened, because how can the people who are only 1 million in South Africa be in the parliament of people who are majority of 70 million, you see, and still hold reins and hold big corporate businesses and also own the biggest plots of land, even bigger than the government, because the government has 13% of land in South Africa, and then the white people have 75%. So how is that even possible? You see, even constitutional. So I think we haven't attained yet that ideological basis. So yeah.
So there was lack of both thought and action. So but I think there was social circumstances. The atrocity you are saying, the issue of land not being on the hands of the black people, was already social circumstances that could then lead to revolution. But now the content of consciousness among the black or the South Africans was lacking, and also
Exactly.
probably there was lack of thought that then could translate to action on the ballot, and then probably there was also lack of solid ideological basis to push the revolution. But I think EFF is in here. Have they not struggled to achieve this ideological basis?
Hey, my lord, the way I see it, like I say, hey, the white folks are too clever, because EFF can never be number 4 in terms of the voting polls, because most of the masses, more especially the youths of my age, we were voting for EFF, you see. So yeah, it really doesn't make sense for EFF to be 9%, my lord. It's clear that they don't want anything that has to do with the EFF. Even if you can listen to Julius Malema now, anything that has to do with removing the borders, you get in trouble even to talk about such things in the streets here.
Okay, thank you. That's a clear examination of really what's going on the ground, and also put in context of what's going on in Kenya. And Sister Tapua has also provided a context of what went on in Zimbabwe during the Mugabe era, which basically was lack of thought, despite of action, you see. So then, yes, before I get to DJ Mr. P, Sister Ida, can you come in? You comment in this paragraph, or you give your thinking in regards to the paragraph, as we try to expound into practice.
It isn't exactly in regards to the paragraph, but I expect it might possibly if you stretch it. But the thing about South Africa that I don't understand, when I look at Kenya and how so many people have got out on the streets, it's like South Africa's in shock, and you're not hearing. I'm not advocating any sort of violence, but you're not hearing anybody just going out on the street to say, "What is this?" You know. Or at least I haven't really heard. And I haven't listened to the brother just now. It's like, oh, wow. I mean, the world is just looking at South Africa and thinking, how can this be? But, we're not hearing anything as such. Sorry.
Okay. You must know that the context of South Africa, the circumstances in South Africa for revolution is somehow very difficult a bit, unlike any other country in Africa. Because the white men wanted to declare South Africa independent. They wanted to declare independence in South Africa, as they did in 1900, to make South Africa be a white man country, the same way they did with Canada and USA. And they wanted to do the same with Zimbabwe and Kenya, so that they were to gain independence from their same white men, to make that the country now was belonging to them as independent people in that country. And therefore, the circumstances in South Africa whereby the white people are the majority with a lot of resources, they are minority, but with a lot of financial resources, we then give them the power for bargain and running industries where they employ the black people, gives them an upper hand, despite of the social circumstances being ready on the ground, the atrocity and everything being ready on the ground. That's why it says that social circumstances and content of consciousness are not one-sided. So social circumstances in one side and content of consciousness in another side. But there must be interrelation between the two in the aspect of thought and action, so that together you can research something. So I think the South African situation, Malema led the highest and the biggest mass demonstration than Kenya. The difference, what went on to Kenya today, there was no any single opposition leader or politician who was in the demonstration, both on Tuesday and the one that took place today. And there was no leader, there was no organization, there was no movement, there was no anything that actually was leading the revolution today. People were just waking up and moving on their own direction to revolt. So there's no politician who was involved. In fact, the celebrities, music celebrities today came out. They were in the street joining the people. This is a purely young people-led revolution, and there's no organization admitting people to the revolution. Greetings to your Miss Raspala. I know she's also listening to the conversation. She can contribute, please. Okay, Sister Tapua?
I'm just thinking that even with the effort of African countries to gain independence, which was supposed to be some kind of revolution, we were caught in this situation where we didn't have a solid ideological base. This is why, for example, a lot of our leaders couldn't go along with Kwame Nkrumah because of lack of ideological basis. And when you talk about, when the passage says, at the same time, they are not chaff before the wind of change. I mean, chaff is light. Chaff is just people going about protesting, and chaff is prone to being taken in whatever direction the wind blows, which is why, for example, we've got infiltration in our governments, we've got infiltration in our institutions. We have people manipulating the wind. So, for example, when they realize that Julius Malema has the wind behind him, someone comes in there to change the direction. And people are so changeable because we've not done the work to provide a solid ideological basis. And I think that applies to the whole continent, which is why, for me, education of people.
And the diaspora,
with regard,
not just the continent, the diaspora as well.
Yes. There is that need for people to be grounded in their ideology so that when the wind blows, we know which direction we want to take it. And nobody is going to manipulate that wind to their advantage, which is what has happened in South Africa. I think what has happened in South Africa is a microcosm of what has happened in the whole of Africa.
Thank you very much, Sister Tapua. But I want to raise a question that I'll ask you again in furtherance of this discussion, because I recently met the guy called Job Shikala.
Yes.
Who is in Zimbabwe. And yes. I know there's an aspect of Zimbabwe in trying to build various organizations coming together after the opposition leader actually resigned from his party. So it's like Zimbabwe do not have opposition. But the various groupings are coming together to form a force that then can offer that positions to the people. And when I met and discussed a bit with Job Shikala, my question from his angle of thoughts were, I wanted to access his organizational structure in terms of education, the engagement of the younger generation in this, and how does this extend to look at the battles in Zimbabwe, not being the battle of Zimbabwe, but rather the battle of all Black people across the world, and seek the international solidarity towards tapping to that move. And this is something that was either lacking in their mentality or is still not ready to be tapped into. And this is what is lacking in mentality of many people in various countries, because even the struggle in Kenya today is not about the younger people in Kenya. It's the struggle of all Black people wherever they are. And how do we tap to the external diaspora who should also be conscious enough to tap into the continental struggle and see it as one? And this is where these things miss. But before I go there, I want to give two examples of the revolution that took place in Kenya. Towards the 2022 election, there were circumstances by the general population whereby the poor, there was a class struggle. The poor were actually feeling like the rich have actually oversat on them for a period of time, pressed them to the lower level. Then William Ruto, who was one of the rich people by that time as a deputy president, came out of the group of the rich to use his resources to get into the group of the poor and manipulated the poor that he was poor like them, and the poor elected him, and with support, he got to be the president. That is where one situation comes in. There is, yes, understanding of your circumstance. There's either some level of consciousness of what's going on, but lack of ideological basis then makes somebody from out to come in and take advantage of this, and he got himself in. And now the same people demonstrated are again saying Ruto must go. Second circumstance is where after election in Kenya, the cost of living went high or up. Then the citizens decided to go to the street to fight for the cost of living. Citizens organically, but the politicians through the opposition leader came in and decided to lead the revolution by the people. So he joined the people. Then what happened? There was then a formation of a national dialogue committee where no person or original ordinary citizens were involved. But now the politicians from the opposition and the government sat in, spent millions of citizens' money to discuss on a document that they brought in that has never been implemented. Then the agitations and the plight of the people were left out. Now the people are back again. Learning from this, there's a lot of what is missing that we can point from this paragraph here. Let me get to, yes, Sister Tapua, and then I'll go to DJ Mr. P to come in now.
Right. I'd like to make a comment vis-a-vis Sikala and Zimbabwe opposition. Since the formation of the different parties that went to war, liberation war for Zimbabwe, there's always been a side that takes they read the wind, they read the direction, they know there's revolution, they know there's historical circumstances are ripe. So the current political party that is in power has become expert at reading the opposition and using the lack of ideology as a weapon. So for example, race in Zimbabwe is used to cower people. The villagers are told the white men will come back. And they vote on the basis of race. They vote for political parties that went to war because they say they're the ones who got the white people away. So there's that shallowness. And I can name about 6 parties that were ripe to drive the revolution, but were manipulated. They were taken advantage of. And the same thing happened with the resignation of the leader of the opposition. He was left no choice because they'd been infiltrated. And then someone else claimed he was the man in the party. So if you look at Zimbabwe's books today, they've got an opposition that is now in bed with the main party because they wanted a certain percentage to be able to change the constitution and change it the way they want. And even with Job and everybody else, until the ideological base is sound, until that ideological base is not based on race, until that ideological base looks beyond the border, then we're going nowhere. Absolutely going nowhere.
Thank you. We'll come back to you later because I also met Senator Morgan Kominchi, a former senator in Zimbabwe. I think you know him also. He's been part of this class once and again, and we will discussing all these things. And actually, the problem of Zimbabwe is the problem of all Africa and across different places. It's the same thing. There was a revolution in Sudan by the younger people in the streets, but today there's still war in Sudan. The people who caused the revolution are not the people in power. And that's why Thomas Sankara, after the revolution, he thought that there's a need for what he called political orientation, where he could teach people on how they can be politically active so that the masses can on the revolution. And that's what Nkrumah says, the revolution belongs to the masses. But let me get to DJ Mr. P to give also his thoughts in regards to what you're saying, and also in this context of the points that have been raised here. Because the key points raised here: social circumstance, content of consciousness, action, thought, and ideological basis. DJ Mr. P, but you are free to share more.
Thank you, my brother. What I've had a quick read of the text, and what I grasp from that is when the fire is hot enough underneath your backside, the winds of change will have you take action, get up, stand up, and take action. Yeah.
Yes.
In other words, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you've decided that enough is enough, a revolution is going to happen. And this is what's happening right now in Africa. Yeah. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for the internet. Thank God for applications like WhatsApp and Telegram, because that is where the revolution is really happening. It's happening in the minds. And as I posted earlier on, and that line talking about the chaff in the text, yeah, alludes to the same thing I was talking about. You know, mindless or thoughtless action will lead you nowhere. You need a foundation, a philosophical foundation or basis on which to base your revolution. The big difference I notice, right, based on the text here and what happens in terms of a so-called revolution or demonstrations here in the UK, is that's why I don't go on any marches here in the UK. They're a complete waste of time. I think the last time I went on a march was 2016. And I just don't bother anymore. Whenever something happens within our community over here, there's uproar, there's a lot of talk, social media goes crazy, there's a demonstration, and that's it. You don't hear anything after that. Why? Because there's no ideological basis. It's a lot of these demonstrations, these protests, they're emotional reactions. There's no thought, there's no teaching, there's no learning, there's no nothing. People are frustrated, they go, they protest, or they riot and burn down the place, and that's it. Nothing changes. Whereas with a revolution, there has to be, or is, an ideological basis. You know, for example, what I see happening in Africa right now is a Pan-African revolution. People are awake. Not only are they awake, they have Ubuntu or a foundation in Pan-Africanism. They know what time it is. They know about neo-colonialism. They know what France is up to. They can see how the West is playing games and playing politics with the rest of the world. And we follow, for example, us here on this call right now, on this Zoom right now. Yeah, we are developing, we are learning, we are reinforcing our ideology through the great Kwame Nkrumah and his thoughts and his ideology, to reinforce what we already know, what we have, or what we don't know, to contribute with our mindsets towards this revolution, which is inevitable. It's happening. Just take a look at Burkina Faso, take a look at Mali, take a look at Niger, look at what's happened in Senegal. So what's happened in Senegal is going to happen in Gambia. Same thing is going to happen, because Senegal is Gambia and Gambia is Senegal. Same people, same tribes, same surnames, same everything, right? So, all right, different languages. One is English speaking and the other is French, but it is basically the same thing. It's the same land. Everything's the same. So, you know, I can see big changes happening also in Gambia. And I'm so happy for President Faye in Senegal, who's actually holding the torch of Pan-Africanism and he's leading the way. He's blazing a trail for other countries to follow. So France is completely pissed off at the moment and wound up because they're losing their grip on the colonies, the effective colonies. So we need to, it's our responsibility, I feel, to spread Pan-Africanism around the world. Not just in Africa, it's got to go around the world, because the diaspora is a huge component in terms of Pan-Africanism. I think a very important component in terms of Pan-Africanism and the unification of Africa. So this education is not just for continentals, it's for Africans worldwide. And when I say education, I'm talking about Pan-African education. So having and learning and knowing what Ubuntu is, reinforced with a Pan-African ideology, the revolution will happen. It needs to happen because, as I said, people are sick and tired. People are, have had enough. And as you can see, there's a coalition of happening in the Sahel right now with those countries I mentioned earlier on, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. They're teaming up, and we are seeing the revolution unfold. Pan-Africanism is spreading. It is spreading. It may be a little slow, but it's spreading, and it will catch fire soon. I think it will catch fire because, as I said, when people's backsides can't take the heat anymore, they will revolt. They'll have no other choice, really. So that's what I get. I get from the text.
Thank you. Thank you, DJ Mr. P. I want to share a bit briefly a photo of a member of this class who happened to be, he do come here in this class from Kenya. Is Comrade Sayalen Mankuyo. He do come sometimes in most of our classes. And this is him in the street of Nairobi. That was yesterday. And you see what he writes there? Ruto is a US puppet, not a Pan-African shame.
Shame, yeah.
This is the sort of what you could call consciousness.
Correct.
Being conscious enough to understand what goes on in a community, then that is the beginning. Because actually, from being conscious is when now you start the processes. Because that's not the end. And you see, they say that's why they say thought and action. So the moment you become conscious in thought, then it must follow the action. But what now will guide your action to be progressive enough is what is the ideological basis of your action. You see? That is very clear coming here. So let me also give more. I know Sister Tapu, I'll come to you. We try to give Brother Simon and Sister Chisomo to share something. We are reading the first paragraph, but we want to go to try the second paragraph just briefly after this discussion so that we read them together. They are somewhat close, but the second paragraph will move a bit now further this discussion. So, Brother Simon Chibi.
Yes, my brother, how are you? Thank you. Greetings, everybody on the class. You have a good discussion.
Thank you. Can you comment anything to the paragraph?
Yes, I find the discussion on because I've joined a little bit later, but I'm happy for the discussion because it makes we African and Pan-Africanists to be more conscious of what is happening around us and with where we are and also in our neighbors. So this is quite a very enlightening discussion and opening, which takes a look at the real issues which are surrounding us within our communities and within us and where we are living. We are also working. So this is quite very important. I will come in after the second paragraph when I have a gist of what others are putting in as inputs. Thank you.
Okay, Sister Tapua, go ahead. Oh, no, Sister Chisomo?
Yes. Oh, Sister Chisomo, that's fine.
Sister Chisomo? Okay, Sister Sapo, you can go ahead, but reread that
Yes.
paragraph for the new members who have joined. Reread it again before you comment on it so that they can catch up.
Okay, right. The paragraph reads, but the interaction between the alteration of social circumstances and the content of consciousness is not one-sided. For circumstances can be changed by revolution, and revolutions are brought about by men who think as men of action and act as men of thought. It is true that revolutionaries are produced by historical circumstances. At the same time, they are not chaff before the wind of change, but have a solid ideological basis. Right, my contribution. I'm going back to, I think the first two lines, but the interaction between the alteration of social circumstance and the content of consciousness is not one-sided. This has brought me to think of the other side, because DA, well, the metaphorical DA in Africa is the other side. So whatever action and whatever thoughts we have, we cannot be successful until we look closely at what the other side is thinking and the strategies of the other side. Because I think this is the mistake that we're making. This is the mistake that our leaders make. Because they go out there, stand photo, whatever, Ruto is up and down, and they're not thinking of what the other side is thinking. So if we're going to have a successful revolution, we must think, even those in the street must think of what the other side is thinking. How is the government of Kenya going to counter this move? Because there will always be a counter. We are here talking about Pan-Africanism. There are people who are against it. We've seen what has happened with the French Sahel in relation to the African Union and Nigeria's reaction to what's happening in the Sahel. There's always a counter. And as long as we're not aware and we're not taking cognizance of what's happening with the counter, we will lose the revolution. So we go into the street, yes. We've got an ideology, yes. We need to be aware of how that ideology is countered. So that, for example, in the South African election, people should have been aware of what the DA was doing. And we should have been making people aware of how to counter it. Because very soon they'll find there's no revolution. We were just in the street, like the Zimbabweans were just in the street. Because right now, a lot of people who are benefiting from what's going on in Zimbabwe will ask you in the social groups that we discussed, and what are you going to do about it? That's a phrase that's now predominant in Zimbabwe's conversation. And what are you going to do about it? Yes, this is what's going on.
Thank you.
There's corruption. Anyway.
Thank you. Now, that is on the action point. So you have thought about it. You know what's going on. But then the question comes on action. What are you going to do about it? And if people are to be united ideologically, then they could have actually known what they can do about it. But also, there's the aspect of fear. Because the action must be clear to a person. Somebody might know, after thinking of a situation, if you can be able to know where there's a wrong or a right thing, if you know where there's wrong thing, it means you know what should be right. By examining to realize that this is wrong, it means you know what is right. What stops you from acting? Then comes the fear. Not the consciousness. Already you are conscious. And that's why the younger people in the streets of Nairobi today had to overcome the fear. And they went straight to the officers and told them, even if you kill us, you'll not kill us all. And this is what we learned in the book called Matigari when we were doing the review in this class, where Matigari said, fear is what rules the world. Because until you are able to fight the fear, which is internal consciousness, you cannot be able to make a move outside yourself. So the battle must start internally. And that's why if you move along in this book, there's what you call positive action, which is positive action from your personal level before it moves to positive action as a group of a society. So it's a group of positive forces linking together, not a group of one positive action with a negative action. The biggest problem becomes the fear. But also beyond the fear, as it is listed here, lack of ideological basis will make, even if you make the courage, even if you make the courage to make the step, even if you succeed in the step, it may never be successful if there was no solid ideological basis. And that's why I give the example. The Zimbabwe became successful. Mugabe was either ousted or what happened. But was there success in later on? There was no ideological basis. But let me get to, I want to move to the next paragraph, but feel free to share to this paragraph. And those people have joined us, this is the conversation. We are actually sharing the first paragraph. And it's eliciting very serious conversation that is very timely for us. So just feel free to share, raise your hand a bit. We'll engage it for another maybe 10 minutes, then we read briefly the second paragraph. DJ Mr. P.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I just wanted to add to what you were saying, because as I said earlier on, action without thought is unintelligent. All right. And what's really key here, what's really important here is that we need to, oh man, it's just gone out of my head what I was going to say. We need to actually have the ideological basis, which is the thought, because what you think leads to what you say, and what you say leads to your actions. So it's really important that we get the mindset right, because that is a basis and foundation for you know, or should be the basis and foundation for every single thing that we do. And I remembered now what I was going to say. The most important thing of all, which will enable, I believe, enable us to overcome that fear. Because as you rightly said, being cognizant and having the ideological basis is great. But what drives people to do what they do is their why. When you know your why, nothing gets in the way. The only things really that should get in your way are sickness or death. Aside from that, when you know what your why is, and your why is big enough, you will, by hook or by crook, accomplish what it is that you have set out to do. So, yeah, so in summary, I just really want us to think about the why. Why are we on this call tonight? Why do we even bother with Pan-Africanism? The why is really important, and I believe the driving factor behind every single thing that compels us to do what we do. Okay, and I yield there.
And that why is actually in the ideology. Because the ideology must answer your why. Ideology must be like your compass direction. I think it is Sankara who said that a soldier without political education is like somebody like somebody with, yeah. So if you go back to that, why? Here we have those who are materialists and those who are idealists. The materialists will know why they should fight. For example, in South Africa, they are fighting for their land. But how will the idealists approach the situation in South Africa? They'll take it in a different direction. They'll either take it in spirituality, fighting for what, intervention, and even their actions of intervention will be different. The materialists will take it physically to fight for their land and seek everything else that can bring them back land. But what will be the idealists do? then either intervene and pray and fast so that the land be brought back to them, either miraculously or either through God's intervention or either any spiritual aspect, that the land leaves a white man's land and come to them. But the materialists will be conscious enough in terms of their action to go to their land directly. You see? If you take the same situation in what happened in Kenya today, if it was to be approached in idealist position from young Kenyans today, they could have not actually come out clearly to fight in the streets, but they rather either go to mosque and churches or whatever and pray for it, or do a meditation and sanction for it so that things can change.
Yeah, they run to the church, exactly.
Yeah, and that is total different things. In fact, today one thing came out clearly in the aspect of religion or idealism coming to the demonstration today in Kenya, where one church, which is a bishop church close to the parliament, where the demonstrators were passing by, was actually used by the police officers, their hiding point, to time the protesters. And when the protesters were running, the church closed the door for them to have a safe space there. But one mosque, which is next to the city, was actually being used as a rescue center, where the ambulances were sitting there to actually treat people who are being beaten or people who are being strangled along the way. And that brought a two contrary thinking in the space. It's coming out clearly. And also, if you look for the context in Kenya, the election in Kenya was more of spearheaded by idealism mentality. People believed that these were candidates from God, God-fearing people, and they went to churches to give money to churches. They were donating money into thousands and thousands to churches, and then they got the blessings of the churches. And the churches prayed for them. The pastors and the bishops came down and kneeled for them and prayed for them. Today, the citizens are telling the churches that this is your problem, and this your problem, we will fix it for you. And you're going out to deal with it. And even the pastors come along, like one of my friends telling me there's no tithes anymore. I tell him, go back to the status where you are getting some money before and get the tithes. So basically, there's a how still this idealism or materialism will affect how we move forward. But if we are united in one ideological basis, like either materialism, we will know what point of action and how to approach it. But lack of that then brings differences in terms of how do we approach the situation. And that is what causes division and actually even delay our mode of action. Let's read let me tell you the second paragraph as we continue the conversation. We'll just touch on it a bit because it's part of this. But the second paragraph says... If
I could just jump in very quickly, I just wanted to add, if I may, please, very
yes?
quickly. Regards what you said earlier on. No, sorry, I think it was Tapua that said earlier on, we're not thinking about what the other side is thinking or how they're going to counter what we're doing. And again, it comes down to thought. You can't just say we're going to do this. You've got to look at when you make an action, what the possible reactions are going to be. And you need to have something ready for that. So reading or studying the book called The Art of War by Lao Tzu is a very good book that gives you a grounding in confrontation, in battle, and in war. Yeah, because we are in a war. We are in a war. Yeah. And also playing a game as simple, or maybe not as simple, but playing or learning to play something like chess sets your mind up. The board game chess, it sets your mind up in a way, one of continuous thinking, and two, counter moves to possibilities. So these kind of things, I think, will definitely support and help us in moving forwards with our strategies.
Thank you. As you read The Art of War, don't forget to read the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which Nkrumah actually outlined if we are in full war combat. This is how we need to organize. This is how our company to be. This is how we need to train who should be where. This is how we should safeguard our borders. Nkrumah also prepared for the war, and he wrote it in a book called Handbook for Revolutionary Warfare. But let's tie this second paragraph. It says that revolution has two aspects. Revolution is a revolution against an old order, and it is also a contest for a new order. The Marxist emphasis on the determining force of the material circumstance of life is correct. But I would like also to give great emphasis to the determining power of ideology. A revolutionary ideology is not merely negative. It is not a mere conceptual refutation of a dying social order, but a positive creative theory, the guiding light of the emerging social order. This is confirmed by the letter from Eagles quoted on the motto page of this book. We will review this letter in our next class and we'll also pick up moving forward in the next class. But let's continue the sharing our thinking as we now move to the second paragraph and tie it with the first paragraph. I'll start with those who haven't spoken in the first paragraph, because I know they might be catching up with us now. And I'll go straight to now Brother Simon Chibi. Then I'll go to Sister Chisomo. Brother Simon, are you now in position to come in? Brother Simon?
Yes. Yes, my brother.
Thank you.
Yes, the whole issue here is to ensure that as Pan-Africanists, we spearhead the revolution. When we are spearheading the revolution, it's not all about taking part or participating, but it's about knowing the cause, so that you also have to communicate with everybody, so that you are all aware of what you want to achieve as a group or as a team. Because when we are looking at the African revolution, when we are looking at those in Africa, when we want to unite the Africans, when we want the Africans to unite, to make sure that there is no divisions, what is more important is to ensure that all what is said that will make us prepared to go on or to work for the unity of Africa, or to try and revolt, so that we show the concerns for the people, because we need our belongings as Africans, because this is all is termed in our culture, our heritage, that we have the material, not the idealist. When we are looking at the all what is happening, this is comes to what we should own as Africans, what we should have as Africans, so that we don't speculate. We are real in what we are saying. So this is what is being anchored here. That is Africans. There is need to conscientize each other. There is need to make sure that we all agree, we all know what we want to do, so that everybody who participates is well informed. At the same time, it's always necessary to guard against our colleagues who want to take advantage of whatever the good things that we are moving, to ensure that their own greed is achieved, so that we don't need to ensure or to work or to revolt, that we just satisfy a few individuals in the group, so that we should all know what exactly we are doing. We should all be partisan. We should all be patriotic. We should all be conscious of what we are doing, and also that we know this is what we need as a people. This is what we need as Africans, so that we continue to liberate ourselves from the bondage that we have been tied up, not looking at the slight things that we might have differences, like our culture, our religion, our whatever way of doing things, which might be slightly different. So that should be set aside when we are looking at how we belong to Africa as Africans, and how we should all gather together and mobilize each other to ensure that we are all going forward, not letting what we have, while basing on the promise that if we go in the spirit and pray, more things will come. Then you let what we have go, anticipating the miracle will happen and we have more things. So it's better to stick to what if the few that we have, maintain that, work with that, rather than letting it go and anticipating that one day miracle will happen and you have as much as you cannot finish, which will not come until the eternity. And thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing your thinking. We really appreciate that. Sister Chitomo?
Hello, good evening.
Good
Sorry, I
evening,
came
Sister.
late, but I kind of have a gist of what's being discussed. Well, I can only give an example of what has happened in my own country, Malawi. The missing vice president and how the country responded. So all along to us, he was a politician, a party leader, a vice president. Things have been going on for so many years. But this particular incident, when he then goes missing and everybody's what's happened, and everybody has their own idea, or we all have the same idea of what has happened. And the reaction is when it says alteration of social circumstances is not one-sided, and for circumstances can be changed by revolution and revolutions brought by men. So what's happened here is the moment this guy dies, it looks like everybody is just awakened, including children. And we all in our heads have one target that we're now working against or working towards or whatever. So it happens that the church, traditional groups, the poor, the rich, the old, the young, the children, everybody's out. Children were on the street saying the same thing elders were saying the same thing youth were saying, young people, gatherings everywhere. It's never happened before that people can just gather without being led by either a politician or a church. People just gathered where they could gather. But the target was the same. The focus, the language, the mindset. So we started thinking that this guy, all along what he's been saying to us, change your mindset, do this, don't be scared. Don't be, how do I say it in English? It was don't be scared. Don't be scared. Meaning just do what you have to do. Don't be fearful of these people, look after yourselves and things like that. Do it together, change your mindset, blah, blah, blah. And everybody now seems to be saying the same thing. And most of the vigil nights declared that he was an idea. He is now the idea that we should all start following, Stop following all these other people they were following. There is this idea that people can actually do things for themselves. And we don't have to follow the idea by the politicians, that we were misled all along by these politicians. Things were not as what we thought they were. This was the real deal. What this guy was saying all along is what we've now realized. So
Thank you.
in my mind, a revolution has happened.
So there's consciousness and already the circumstance has been created. The situation has been created. And now there's consciousness. So it's a matter of how now the action comes in, then how the action should be guided on a ideological basis. So already the situation is ready.
All those party political divisions where, I support this, I support that, and you're waiting for your side to tell you what to do or fight for them, just suddenly stopped.
Okay.
And people had one target, one mindset, and what should happen from now on. For example, now he has to select another vice president. So it's now confusing because of the way they got into power, the way this guy became the vice president. So how do they undo that to then choose another vice president? That's the other confusion now. But you can hear the voice from the general public is the same. We don't want that anymore. You sort yourselves out.
Thank
So,
you.
Please, can I ask, the vice president you lost was the one that was lost in the helicopter?
The aeroplane, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, correct, yeah.
Yes, we'll be having a session on this very soon to examine the situations. And I think, myself, I'll work together with Sister Chisoma a bit, but I'll work on bringing some concept that we'll have to examine. And also we'll do it on our Saturday classes to examine also how this process and what we learn are at play and give probably what is the ideological or philosophical way forward for the people of Malawi as a class. So we'll also have a proper session to examine everything else, learn from his attributes or what he was thinking, find a way on how we can build up together, how we can awaken the consciousness, and how we can guide towards action on an ideological angle. This is what we're already working on. And I know I've been told by Brother Kwame and we'll be working on preparing something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sister Myra, then Sister Ida.
If I can just focus on one line that says, a revolutionary ideology is not merely negative. I like that because a lot of the times when people hear the word revolution, say, oh no, we don't want violence. But I think it's trying to say that it's not always about violence. It's also about calls it a positive creative theory that is used as a guiding light. So again, that's talking to our minds, our consciousness, our knowledges, that's also revolutionary. Like the sister that has shared before, people are actually starting to open up their minds and think differently. That's revolutionary.
Exactly. There were no violence involved, although some traditional groups wanted to use traditional methods. But we all kept coming back to one setting of responding.
So perhaps this stage of educating people, teaching, making people awareness could be our tool that we can use now.
Yes.
And Brother Pigeon, if you could allow me to just kind of echo what Brother Mr. P has said. I really loved everything he said today. He said that the revolution will happen. Absolutely, it will. That's a given. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So for me, I feel now our preoccupation should be, will we be prepared? Or will we be caught unawares? I think we ought to be prepared.
Thank you, my sister. We are. This is why we're on this call tonight.
Thank you.
We are preparing. We are.
I think if we are going to be in this, we are in this struggle, right? But we also need to be, and I've said this before, we need to be connoisseurs of time, right? And Sister Tapua said that the opposition in her country, they know how the government knows how the opposition thinks. We should also learn how to read the wind of change and see what is happening where and when. We should also use the same tactics and the same tools. But comrades, let's be prepared. Let's be at the right time in the right place. Because Brother Pigeon, just one thing. The last thing I want to do is to be in our 80s and our 90s, supreme being allowing. And we are saying, oh, Brother Pigeon, if only we could have done. No, let us not regret anything. Please, let us not regret anything. Let us do it. Because I feel like the winds of change are upon us, and it feels like it comes around once in a few cycles, and this is the time. I believe it. Let us do it, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Sister Mara, to be honest, but when I realized the people in the streets for Tuesday and Thursday today, in fact, I told Brother Kwame, it's like, I'm feeling how I was caught unaware. I'm not prepared to take the advantage of, like to lead and get into this. Because you see, I've been busy in organizational level to think of how do I create the mass movement and the party I've been working on. Because at one point, the revolution must now have an organized system. Because the
Yes.
people might start it
Yes.
rapidly, as the circumstance
Yes.
is saying here, that the circumstance might allow people to be on the ground. The people might be conscious, but where do they get a unified, solid ideological basis? It must be through a vanguard, whatever, either movement or a party or whatever. And I was caught off guard because I'm still busy trying to work on that. But here, people are already on the street, they are ahead of us, which means actually the majority of Africans might be ahead of us in terms of their thinking in revolution. And how do we prepare to push that forward? So I think that's very important as you are raising, Sister Tapua, on the aspect that the revolution might not merely be the ideology. A revolution ideology is not merely negative, because this also tap to something like, is it mental revolution or is it physical? I'm receiving a report now that one young person has been shot dead just in the demonstration that's not even over in Kenya up to now. People are still in the streets up to this particular moment agitating at this time, which is almost 10 p.m. Kenya time. So when you talk of not negative, which type of revolution are you talking about in this aspect? And what makes it negative is something that we need to think of as we do and as we keep sharing more. So more people will be coming in as we share your thinking in regards to the second paragraph. Try also to see what is this paragraph meaning. A revolutionary ideology is not merely negative. That's very important for us to consider. Thank you and welcome our chair, Brother Kwame. I'll give you time a bit to tell to us the two paragraphs I've highlighted in green. Those are the paragraph you are reading, so that you'll give us your thinking in regards to that. Before I go to Sister Tapua, let me get to Sister Ida. What's your thinking in regards to the second paragraph and also what you want to take from the first paragraph? I want to ensure everybody speaks before I give Brother Kwame to end up. Sister Ida? Sister Ida, you are still muted.
So sorry, I was elsewhere. I wanted I think from this, what you've all said, and also from the reading, I love the fact that revolution comes in two ways, that there's an old and a new. And I think that what we've been hearing is the quite new coming into parts of Africa, especially East Africa, and also the Sahel states. You know that there's a new wave of revolution, and it's not a violent one. It's people coming out and being present and trying to change. And I like that. I love that bit in this reading.
Thank you.
That it also says a revolutionary ideology is not merely negative, and that's the bit I'm saying that I think there's I find a new revolution in that loads of people are just out on the streets. I think they had it. What was it? In parts of Europe at one point where a lot of the unions were out, and it just got a lot of people out on the streets. And then it's also Arab Spring, all those sorts of things. So I think it's happening in Africa in its own way. So that's what I've got to say.
Thank
and
you.
I like that two sorts. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Sister Tapua?
Yes, thank you. Right, I'm going to start right from the beginning. The fact that revolution has two aspects, right? I think in a lot of ways, Africa as a continent, as a country, has been agreed on who they are against. They are against the old order. But the challenge has been the contest for a new order. I think that word there, contest. In other words, once we've agreed that the colonial system is bad, we then started to compete amongst ourselves as to what the new order must look like. And I think this is where we're lacking. Because when we speak to people about revolution and revolutionary ideology, people see the negative. We need to make sure that we put upfront a positive, creative theory, a guiding light of the emerging social order. In other words, we cannot talk Pan-Africanist if we're not going to alert people to what it looks like, what it means. And when something happens, like what's happening in Kenya, we need to be a guiding light of the emerging social order. Because I think we've been caught aback. Because I was asking myself, all right, we've all these people in the streets in Kenya. We've got the Malawi situation. We've got the Zimbabwe situation. We've got the South African situation. Where are we as Pan-Africanists? I think I remember very clearly how the Communist Party of South Africa took charge of organizing the workers. They actually got people with PhDs and computing science or whatever degrees they had to go underground into the mines, to work with the miners, to organize. And I think that's where we're lacking. I think we're almost like we're being too academic in terms of wanting to know the theory in detail and well enough, because the wheels are moving. And like my brother has said, we're not prepared for what's happening in Kenya. And with the guiding light, we don't have the structures, but we can see what's happening. And that's where I think we need to act. We need to make sure that we are positive in telling the people where we must go. Let's start singing the African song and make sure that people know that there's an advantage in being Pan-Africanist. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to DJ Mr. P.
Okay, where are we? Second paragraph.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, when you speak to people about Pan-Africanism, what I've experienced, when you mention Pan-Africanism, the first thing that comes to their mind is politics, revolution, and many people are not really interested or want to be involved in Pan-Africanism. They see it as a negative thing. And that line halfway through the second paragraph, a revolutionary ideology is not merely negative. Many people look at Pan-Africanism as a negative thing, fist up in the air and aggression. They see or they sense or they feel that Pan-Africanism is about militancy. And, you know, I don't have a problem with militancy, because that's what I think that's what we need. We need to be militant in how we're doing things. We need to be regimental in how we're doing things, because as I said earlier on, we're in a war. We are in a war. And if you're a Pan-Africanist, you are a soldier in that war. So you need to, as a Pan-Africanist, have a certain amount of militancy about you, have a certain amount of self-discipline in how you speak and in what you do. And I'll say now, the Nation of Islam is, to a point, I'll mention them as we're talking about militancy, to a point, the Nation of Islam has that structure. They have that level of organization. Yeah, okay, they're a religious group, but as brothers and sisters, they have that militancy about them. They have that structure about them, and they are feared. They are feared by the Caucasians as individuals and as an organization. They don't have the kind of fear in the Caucasians that they need, because if they did, they would have had them shut down. But I don't think that the Caucasians actually see the Nation of Islam as a threat. That's why they've left them alone. But you know, just focusing on that line, a revolutionary ideology is not merely negative. Yeah, that's one of the things I think that puts a lot of people off when you say Pan-Africanism. When people hear that, I think they are put off by that. But we need to, I think, maybe rebrand in such a way that it's cool to be a Pan-Africanist, and the teachings and what's involved and what needs to be done in becoming a Pan-Africanist isn't negative. It is a positive thing. And really and truly, the only way forward is unification. We cannot do or go anywhere by ourselves. It's not going to work.
Thank you. Just that the last part of that second paragraph says this is confirmed by the letter, which we have not have time to share today, but I think we'll have time to look at it in our next class. Let me get what Raspala is thinking. Raspala, can you share your thinking with us? Raspala?
Yeah, my brother, let me pass this time, my brother.
Okay, thank you. We are left with Simon Chibi. Did you share your thinking in the second paragraph? Or do you want to share your thinking? I'm not sure. Simon? Okay. Okay. Then permit me then to go to Osandi Sub, Sister Tapua. Is your hand up? Or Osandi Sub?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Sister Nancy. Let me get to Sister Nancy, who was not able to speak by then, but she's been
Yes.
listening all along. So let me start with
That's
Sister
fine.
Nancy. We are having around 15 minutes to go. Sister Nancy?
Thank you. This will be brief. I think it's important that we distinguish between, well, let me put it like this. It almost sounds like some of the comments are equating positive, I guess positive revolution or aspects of revolution with the kind of positive action that Nkrumah talked about, but then equating negative aspects of revolution with violence. And I think it's important that we look at violence as a tactic and not a principle. We don't want violence, but we know that our enemy, imperialism, is violent and will stop at nothing to maintain their dominance. The day is going to come that we have to make that choice, the hard choice that, maybe violence is the only answer. So I don't reject violence. It's certainly not a first choice. And as far as what the people believe about Pan-Africanism, I think we have to view that as our challenge as Pan-Africanists to understand, we understand Nkrumah's vision. We understand what the future is supposed to look like and will look like. But our challenge is to help others understand that who may not. To understand the possibilities, to understand our responsibility, to understand that our freedom is our responsibility and nobody's going to give it to us and nobody's going to even let us get it willingly. So it's not just about educating ourselves. The question is, how do then we take our understanding and spread it among people who have as much desire to be free as we do, but maybe don't have an understanding of Pan-Africanism or maybe have not heard some of these messages. And that's the hard part, because I think that, the statement that people reject Pan-Africanism, a lot of people, because they have misconceptions about it. Well, they have misconceptions because our enemy wants us to have misconceptions. Our enemy, confuses us about what justice really looks like and presents themselves as an epitome of justice when it's just the reverse. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think what we have to do is figure out how to do it. How do we communicate with people and take away this fear of what freedom looks like and take away the misunderstanding of what it is that we should be struggling for and what we should be struggling against. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, we are here to study consciousness as our proper ideology so that we can have a solid ideological basis This is the tool we are arming ourselves with so that we can understand it properly. Because I think even what is lacking in Pan-Africanism is they don't have that proper understanding. And consciousness presents this to my understanding. And if until we learn it solidly, as you are saying, yes, from that solid basis, we must now take it to the people. And as I've said before, Nkrumah was prepared for even violence revolution, and that's why he wrote the book Handbook for Revolutionary Warfare. But Sister, hands are up, and I will not limit you, even though we have 8 minutes to go. I'll give Brother Kwame the last 5 minutes to comment, to share his thinking, and also share briefly his thinking in the 2 paragraphs, because we may not have enough time. But let me get to Sister Tapua, Sister Chisomo. Sister Nancy, is this a legacy hand, or you want to come in? Okay. Okay, and then let me get to Sister Tapua and then Sister Chisomo.
Right. I am one for action, because I'm thinking, I've written in the chat section there, please may we work on building a positive side of Pan-Africanism, because I think we need to be men of action driven by thought. We need to, for example, put a Saturday aside where we can build arguments for. And then we need the media guys to kind of come up with thematic ideas per period of time. It could be a month where we're just bombarding social media with ideas that Pan-Africanism is it. And we're looking at the passage there. There's a point that says, let me just enlarge it too big. Right. There's a point there that says, it is not merely conceptual refutation of the dying social order. In other words, we need to mention that this is not working, that the order that we have right now is dying. But we also need to juxtapose this with the creative side of telling people what is good about. Because right now, a lot of people have been fed information that Pan-Africanism is bad, that if you become a Pan-Africanist, you see as being Zimbabwean, that if you become a Pan-Africanist, you see as being Ga or whatever else we are. And yet that's not the case. I think we really need to come up with some way of countering what the other side is doing. Those are my thoughts, practical things. We need to make sure we work on that at some point.
Thank you. Action point, because Brother Kwame will tell you there are different types of Pan-Africans. Sister Chisomo?
Yes, yeah, my argument was going to be the same, that there is a misconception about Pan-Africanism or different understanding of what it is. So depending on circumstances or your lived experience or your background and all that business, because even if you're discussing the same thing between people in Africa, and you often hear it on this channel, what is Search for Uhuru. So you have people from in America and people in Africa talking about Pan-Africanism, but in a completely different directions because of where they are, the environment and what the experiences are. We've seen it in South Africa. EFF was affected because that's what they were about. And people within South Africa didn't like it. They felt it was taking them away from their ideology as opposed to what EFF was about. In my country, the same thing. And as we are moving on, you can now see the old and the new thinking, the differences. The old, whilst they're again going for the same target and the young going for the old target, but the old is saying, oh, we need to ask the UN, we need to ask help from UK, we need to ask help from United States to come and help us investigate what happened. And I'm thinking, all those countries in Africa, even when the plane was missing, they said, we called US, we called UK to come and help us find the plane. So that's the old way of thinking. And the young people are like, they don't mention all these things. Their way of moving on we can do it by ourselves. We can be one Africa. We can be. So the people talking about Africa are now separate from the people who keep going back to the West for help, or who keeps so and in fact, when this happened, I was saying to myself, it's amazing how within 1 week I have learned a lot about my own country, and how we're not even fighting the white man. We're not even fighting colonialism,
No, we're
but
not.
fighting our own system. Fighting against our own system. We've just realized how oppressed we were by our own people, by our own media, how they stuffed us of exactly what was going on in the country. This guy's death has just uncovered everything. So whilst we're looking elsewhere for the enemy,
we need to
the
look
house needs sorting out.
Yeah, we need to look closer to home.
The house needs sorting out. How are we going to tell these people to stop telling us about going to UK to come and tell us how the plane went missing?
I know.
Do you see what I mean?
But when it's them that sponsored the downing of the plane in the first place, probably.
They were not here when it went down. Of course, they've got the machinery, but we know who did it. They're mentioning the names. Start with those people.
Okay.
Who went to the aircraft? What did they see?
Okay, okay, Sister Chisomo. As I said, we will have a session on that, but you raised something that we covered before called the inside-outside thesis. People think the problem is outside, or people want to view the problem internally. And that's the differences in Africans who think that our problem might also still be outside there. It's an old way of thinking.
The media in my country, even on the day, the funeral, the media were still sticking to their old ways. Fortunately, we were speaking amongst ourselves through social media. We didn't need the mainstream media. We didn't need the politicians to tell us. In fact, they were pushed away. The community, the people directed what's going to happen at the funeral, before the funeral, and everything else.
Thank you, Sister Chisomo. We are having almost 3 minutes to go, 3 to 4 minutes, and permit me to allow Brother Kwame to come in, even though it's very late to Brother Kwame, but hope you'll understand and maybe share with us your thinking in regards to 2 paragraphs. You have not exhausted the second paragraph.
I don't understand. Thank you for asking, but I don't understand why we are talking about things that we've agreed to speak about them on a specific day. We've set aside a date to deal with certain issues. Why are we repeating them here? And so, Chair, you need to direct the discussion towards the philosophy, please. Yeah. I just want to make, there isn't enough time, so I'll just make a few points.
Good evening, Christian.
Yeah, good evening. The first point is that, Sister Chisomo, you said we are fighting our own system. That system is called neocolonialism. Our people are part of neocolonialism. It's not just imperialists, the foreigners. The foreigners and the Africans are now working together. So what you are calling our own system is precisely what the problem is. That is neocolonialism. Number 2, action points. May I remind us that we here cannot do everything. What we can do is what we are doing. Yeah. What are we doing? Nobody was teaching anybody about philosophy, the philosophy of Pan-Africanism. No one was doing it. In fact, up until when I started looking at conscientism, you couldn't even find a book to buy. Yeah. The book was banned. You remember Nkrumah's books were banned in Ghana, years ago. So books were hard to get. The book that brother Pigeon mentioned about on warfare, that you couldn't even find at all. So the second point I want to make is that what we are trying to do here is to be the ideological vanguard, and then we'll support those who want to take whatever action they want to take. But we can't do everything. What we are doing is this is our action. What we are doing now is our action. holding these consistent Thursday and Saturday meetings and the Tuesday meetings on Kiswahili. That is what we can do. If anybody wants to do something else and they want support, please feel free. We will support you ideologically. The other point I want to make is Pan-Africanism. What is Pan-Africanism? There are a lot of, I've heard a lot. I didn't hear everything because I came in late. But as far as we in this class are concerned, Pan-Africanism is the liberation, unification, and development of Africa. That's what it is. If people understand it differently, it is what it is. I agree that we have to communicate and so on, tell people about it. That means that there has to be communication warfare, and that requires resources. We here can't do that. What we need are people out there who can take on that fight, and then we will provide the ideological lead. What we are doing here is ideological edification, ideological, if you like, strengthening ourselves ideologically, enabling us to get our own thinking straight. There isn't one Pan-Africanism. There are three types. And when people say that they don't like it, find out the one they don't like, because ours may not be what they don't like. Then the other point about revolution not being negative, there are different ways to look at it. Again, because of time, I'll stop there. I wouldn't be able to say more. I think at the end of the day, what I would say is that you guys here who come to this class every Thursday, every Saturday, especially the Thursday class, you are to be commended, because you have shown that you want to help develop the ideological clarity that our people need. So thank you very much for being here and for being part of what we are doing. Thank you. Pigeon.
Thank you very much. That brings us, it's already 11 p.m., which is already 9 p.m. over there. And that brings us to the end of our class today. As I've said, we'll actually delve deeper on the second paragraph, which starts with the revolution. The two sides of aspects of revolution. That's what we'll dwell on. Then we'll also share this letter that's mentioned here in our next class. So thank you very much for your attendance today. And let's meet on next Saturday. This Saturday, we are dealing with the colorism. I'll be doing the post as soon as possible so that we discuss the aspect of colorism, which brought some few, I could call it either confrontation or argument, but you have to have a day for it. So this Saturday, be prepared for it, and it will be in line with our unification. How do we use it for the unification? And how is it being used somehow to divide us? And what ideologically can it be used to be a tool of unification? So that's what we'll be having this Saturday. So without much ado, permit me to end the recording here, and let's meet on Saturday.